Greetings, friends, and welcome to Head Above Water, the podcast about filmmaking and mental health and all that it takes to go into this topsy-turvy business called show. On this week's episode, this is our San Francisco DocFest, SF DocFest special. And on this episode, we'll have our first ever doc filmmaker on the show, Chelsea Christer, from the closing night film for SF DocFest, Bleeding Audio. We'll have links and everything in the show notes for how you can watch Bleeding Audio. It is available now online, even though it's the closing night film. It's available throughout the festival, so you can watch it right now if you're in the United States. I don't know about internationally, but I'll put the links in the notes and you guys can check it out. Don't want to spend too much time. We ran a little long with Chelsea. It was a nice, good conversation about working in documentary and the timelines involved in documentary. And it takes years to make a documentary picture, and that can really, really drag on you. So she was very, very open and honest about that process. And I don't want to take up too much of your guys' time, so we're going to dive right in. And I'll be back on the other side with some other info for you. Until then, here's our conversation with director Chelsea Christer. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here today with Chelsea Christer of Bleeding Audio, a new movie that is out and about on the festival circuit right now. Whatever the festival circuit really is, we'll dive into that as well. But Chelsea, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me.
Let's dive in a little bit. I obviously want to talk about the movie and talk about all sorts of stuff because you had a premiere at Cinequest for your film right in the middle of March when everything just decided to go boop.
Oh yeah.
So we can, we can dive in, just about all the angst and stuff that comes from getting all excited about unleashing your movie to the world and then having it all kind of, stop all at once. But why don't you give me a little bit of background on yourself, who you are, and about the film and all of that. So tell me a little bit about yourself, tell the audience, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, just real quick, I'm originally from Colorado. I moved to San Francisco almost 15 years ago, and I went to film school. Misguidedly or, wisely,
Where did you go to film school?
Differs. I went to the Academy of Art.
Okay, in San Fran?
Yeah.
Right.
Which, it gets some criticism that I think is appropriate, but also it's a great trade school. So I feel like I left there knowing all the skills, but didn't really know story very well. So I had to seek that out on my own.
Right.
But yeah, from there, I started making little short films, just some of these things that I worked on, and one that I directed for somebody, one that I wrote. And I started working in the corporate sector. Corporate video is the work that you get up here in the Bay Area. And so that's primarily what I do to pay my bills. And
Great.
Then 6 years ago, I started working on Bleeding Audio, and that has become my first feature.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit about what the picture's about real quick.
Yeah, so Bleeding Audio is a music documentary. It's about a band from the Bay Area, from Oakland, California, called The Matches. And we use their story to dig a little deeper into how the music industry has changed for musicians. But, it's a story of triumph. It's a story of failure. It's a story of how the community of music is probably the only thing keeping our bands alive today. Mm-hmm. So that's what it's all about. And especially
Awesome.
Right now, it's going to make you super nostalgic for being in a hot, sweaty show with a bunch of people.
Yeah, because they're not having those right now, unfortunately. No. So, all right, well, let me ask you this. So tell me a little bit about the origin of the project. I did, I was doing a little research. I didn't get a chance to watch the whole picture, but I started popping through it a little bit. I definitely want to watch the whole thing. First of all, I'll say this to you and to the audience. It looks like $1 million. Like it looks just like in like a studio concert film. So like get ready to see this picture when it comes out because it looks and sounds absolutely gorgeous. So I just wanted to get that out of the way now.
Aw, shucks. Thank you.
Let's talk a little bit about the origin of the project because like I said, I was doing a little bit of research and I saw you had Kickstarters. And one of the things that, because I had a Kickstarter for my film Getting Over as well, one of the things that I've kind of, that is of interest to me with crowdfunding is because it's a whole new way of raising money, and I would not have been able to do it. I wouldn't have been able to make my film without the Kickstarter. I'm sure you as well.
Oh, no.
Talk to me a little bit about the origin of the project and what led you to Kickstarter versus maybe Indiegogo, or why you chose that platform and what it was like doing that first campaign and trying to hit your goal. And I'll frame it like this, because, I was looking, you guys raised about $39,000, I think, on that first one, and you were asking for 35.
Yeah.
So you just hit that little, hit that goal with Kickstarter. It's all or nothing, as we know. So talk to me a little bit about just the process of getting the campaign going, what it was like running the campaign, and how crazy it was just like, chasing that goal.
Yeah. So I'll start with just the origin of the project.
Sure.
So the Matches are people who I've known since I've moved to the Bay Area. When I was in film school, I did like a little mini doc for them in like 2008.
Cool.
And that's kind of where I found a little bit of a love of overlapping two of my interests, which was music and film,
Cool.
and storytelling, really. And basically, they broke up in 2009, and they were always one of my favorite bands, and then became friends. And when I learned about their reunion, they told me in late 2013, actually, they said, oh, hey, we're thinking about doing this. And I just thought, oh my God, this is going to be huge.
Cool.
I'm making these videos for corporate films now or whatever. Like, let me make some marketing videos for you guys. It's something that I can do. I can do it for free. It's going to be fun for me. It's going to be beneficial for you. And we can kind of tease out this whole reunion, because no one ever expected them to return.
Right.
And so while I was interviewing them for these little promo videos, I decided to dig a little deeper into their history, and it honestly, it blew my mind how much I didn't know about them, thinking that I was a big enough fan and a friend. And each one of their milestones kind of corresponded with how the industry has shifted. But also there's so much that I realized that you see a band that's doing very well and you think, oh, they're like, everything is going great and they're about to make it big. They're doing well. They can sustain. But what's really happening behind the scenes is so disjointed.
It's like filmmaking.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like especially in the music industry, in terms of compensation and with the digital age and streaming, it's not a full-on attack on it, but it's something that drastically changed how artists are able to navigate or sustain their careers. And most of them don't, because anyway. And so I started learning a lot more about them. Decided, hey, I'm going to make a movie about these guys. They're all, I said, this is a bigger story. I'm going to make a movie. And they were too humble. They're like, we're not interesting enough for a movie. And I had to get them on a phone call and, agree, this is what I'm going to do. Can I have access? And they were just like, you're going to be there anyway. So,
might as well. So I guess that was an easy conversation then.
Yeah. I mean, I've talked to other documentary filmmakers where access is often the most difficult part of making the movie.
Documentary world, access is the name of the game.
Yeah.
That's why I made a movie about my family, because I figured it would be easier than making anything else. I don't have to ask anyone else for permission. I'm just going to say yes. Exactly.
And so that's essentially what happened with me. Is I got to skip that. I got to skip that stress. But then leading into the Kickstarter, I think so I had done a Kickstarter previously for my short film.
Okay. So
I had experienced the format, the heart attack, except I had done a 60-day campaign. And I had like a sense of what it was, and the platform was also maturing and getting a lot more traction. We did our Kickstarter shortly after, I think Zach Braff or something had done Kickstarter, or it was around that same time period.
Right.
So it had so much more visibility at the time. And so that's why we decided to do it. At the time, I had a producer working with me, Jeanette Bavona, and she was, instrumental in helping me. Also, a friend of mine that I met, I volunteer at Sundance. I've been doing it for 11 festivals.
Oh, great.
And one of the women that I met there, 10 years ago, Sharn, she was like a social media guru, and she really helped me with the campaign as well, because I happened to be traveling for work throughout most of it. So anyway, I actually had like a small team of people help me with that first Kickstarter campaign, which was amazing. And then the second Kickstarter that we did for post-production, it was basically just me. Mm-hmm. And that was a totally different experience. I had to not take any jobs. I was freelance at the time, and I just had to completely dedicate myself to this thing.
So you were basically running that second campaign all by yourself at that point? What was the time difference in between the two campaigns?
2.5 years, 3 years almost.
Okay, so it was a totally. Let me ask you this question then. It's these are all kind of just like foundation questions for the mental health stuff. But when you ran that first campaign, were you promising a finished movie to people, or did you always have it in your mind that we would do another one?
So I made sure that everybody knew that this was for production only.
Okay.
Because I knew that post-production was going to cost something, whether I was able to elicit support for editorial, because I was doing a ton of work with editors. One of my best friends is an editor and ended up, working for us for free. But I knew that I knew how expensive finishing was, and I knew that color correction was going to be insane. And I knew that there was something looming in post-production. So I made sure to keep all the messaging around the first Kickstarter to be, this is for production only. We are either going to have to have another Kickstarter someday down the line, or we'll be able to apply for grants, and which we did and got none. So I made sure to keep that messaging in there. It wasn't always, people don't read, so it wasn't always, it didn't always come across, but I made sure that.
Were you afraid that by not promising them a finished movie, that if something had happened, because documentary filmmaking, as we know, is a very long, drawn out process, were you afraid? How did you, let me frame it this way, because when I did mine, I felt so indebted to the people that helped, and I only asked for $6,000. I just needed enough just to, basically get started. And I was intending on stretching that as far as I could go. And so I actually, I felt a debt to every single person that gave, that I need to deliver to them a finished thing.
Oh yeah.
Were you ever afraid while you were raising the money that if the movie doesn't get finished, or if something, stops or something like that, you're taking their money without delivering anything? Like what did you do to deal with that?
Yeah. I mean, I guess in my head, not finishing the movie was never an option, but the amount of time that it took to get it finished and the amount of stress in between that, and I already burdened myself so much, just like you, with feeling so indebted to everybody that supported us. I constantly feel that stress, constantly. You can ask my producer. She's like, you don't need to send this message out if you don't want to.
Right.
They supported you. You're going to deliver. It's just not the way that anybody expects, because the film industry is different,
right.
And it's but I always feel this weight of responsibility, because, I'm a fan too, and I'm so appreciative that a lot of fans don't have the funds to just, frivolously give something. I want to deliver a product.
Right.
But yeah, not finishing the movie was never an option to me. I just never even thought about not finishing it. It was just never a thing that I ever considered, because I just knew that I had to in order to, one, make myself happy, and two, to also make all of these other people happy. But what I will say, and this is not calling anybody out specifically, I will say that sometimes some fans were a little unhelpful in asking about asking when it's going to be done. And it's not on them. It's on me, just because I take everything to heart, where I'm just I'm already super stressed that it's not done for my own mental health.
Right.
You asking me, hey, when the movie is going to be done, that's not super helping my already frazzled state, and
right.
and again, I'm not pointing fingers or blaming anybody, but it's just it was one of those things where it's just I already care so much about you guys getting this, and I'm doing everything that I can to make it happen, and
right.
I'm just so sorry it's taking so long. It took so much longer than I ever anticipated. I think I looked at it like just a longer corporate video in a way, and I was I'll just finish filming and then I'll just start putting this all together. It's that easy, and it's just not.
Was this your first foray into doc filmmaking? This is your first doc feature?
My first feature, because I had done a ton of little docs for work, or a couple that I did in college or whatever, because I basically just went directly from college.
Skills.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I was definitely, I had the confidence of youth a little bit in terms of just how I could turn this thing around.
Right.
But especially now looking back and having to watch it, I have to QC another version of it even after our call right now. But I look back and I'm just oh God, I could have done that so much better. I think that's the hardest part of being a documentary filmmaker, especially when it takes as long as it does. You're oh God, 6 years ago, Chelsea. So much to learn.
Right. So talk to me a little bit then about that process of putting the movie together, of thinking that it would take less time than it actually did, and how did that affect you? Like what, talk to me about just some of the challenges of production and how it affected your mental state moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we were off to a really great start because, well, here is one of the main challenges that happened is we made the rookie mistake of having our Kickstarter end in November, which means that production wouldn't have started until the following year. So we got taxed on the pot of money. So basically, we instantly lost 38% of
that's in addition to the cut that
Kickstarter took. So at the end of that Kickstarter, well, and then you have to think of the rewards that I had to make too.
Right.
So at the end of the Kickstarter, we probably had like 45% of like the actual funds that were donated to us, which was a huge blow. And it was one of those things where there could have been some loophole we could have done, but neither of us had the business acumen to be able to know how to do that when filing our taxes. So it was a huge blow, honestly, and that was really stressful because it was like, oh, we thought we were going to be operating, after the Kickstarter fees and after all the rewards, we thought that we were going to be operating on like a $30,000 budget, and that like almost instantly became a $15,000 budget, and it was very stressful. But we made it work, and I was able to pull a lot of favors with a lot of people. But I think what's like really interesting too about documentary filmmaking is you can set out and you write your treatment and you think you know your story, and then it kind of takes you in another direction.
Oh, of course.
And the big thing that I think is the hardest thing to know is when to stop filming. And after the Matches did this whole reunion thing, and after I did a ton of music industry interviews at the beginning of 2015, the thought was, okay, cool. Production is wrapped. I'm going to do all the super long band interviews after this, and then I'll be good to go. But then the band decided to start recording new music. And so I went, oh, this is a really compelling development. Here's a band who like kind of went away into their like turtle shells, and then they were inspired by like the fan reaction to their reunion and were inspired to create again. How is that not the most interesting story in the world? Spoiler alert. Literally none of that is in the final cut. So I spent almost an entire like year pushing production so that I could get those interviews. And then 2016, so basically like we're turning the bend of 2015 and like coming into 2016. And then 2016, they did another tour that I captured a little bit of footage on, but I was primarily focused on getting like the final band interviews in 2016, and just so that I could have the skeleton of the story. And then I had like a personal thing happen. My mom actually, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so, she's doing great. She is the most ridiculous, spry, like 70-year-old woman that you've ever met. She lives on a ranch. She's, she's doing fine. But it was like 2016 was kind of a super intense emotional year.
Sure.
And so then I had to, because I kept trying to carry the film and like take care of her a little bit because I was flying back and forth. I just couldn't do both. I just couldn't do it. So I like set it down. I was like, okay, we're setting this down for like 4 months and we're going to see where we're at. Then I tried picking it up again, but I was like, okay, time to like speed to post-production. And it was like trying to rev an engine with like no battery power, So it wasn't until early 2017, as the years start turning, that I was like, okay, I have to do another Kickstarter.
Right.
And then also apply for grants at the same time. So yeah, it was like this marathon where there are just like these huge lulls. And then like you kind of sprint and then you lull again,
Sure. Which is kind of why like that's the part that's kind of like narrative, like on like a more, micro level. Like it's a hurry up and wait situation when you're on set for a narrative, but in documentary it's hurry up like and wait another 3 months sometimes. Things can, stop and start like that. Let me ask you a question about your mom if I may.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So when your mom got sick, obviously, I assume it's an easy decision to say, I got to set the movie down to take care of my mother.
Yeah.
Did you try to do both at the same time for a little bit and then it was just too much?
Yeah.
Like, talk to me about that process of working through some person. Like for me, like nothing particularly bad happened, but I ended up getting married and I had to pause everything to get married, So talk to me a little bit about what it's like dealing with the real world, if you will,
right?
Versus, the movie world. And some things are more important than others and you got to make make decisions.
Totally. And honestly, for me, when she was diagnosed, for me, it was like there was zero question. I was just like, okay, great. Like, I'm flying out. I'm gonna go take care of you. And I was kind of taking a breather to. God, now that I think about it, 2016 was a weird year because I got married too, but I basically eloped. So like, but I basically like the pattern was, it was like my mom got diagnosed with breast cancer. My husband and I eloped. And then like I got a freelance job, but then we found out that she needed to have surgery. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, I got to pause this freelance thing. And I just like, went out and I was just like, okay, the film, honestly, it was just like, okay, film is like pausing completely. Because right before my husband and I eloped, actually, I filmed the final interview with the lead singer of the band. I was actually, the only reason why I remember this is because I was just going through all these photos for some social media promotion today. And I was just like looking at the timeline. I was like, 2016 was a fucked up year, man. There's so much shit going on. And yeah, I mean, it was just, I think the thing, because if my mom listens to this later, and she probably will, the thing that was difficult is she did not want me to stop for her, And it wasn't necessarily for her, it was for me too, but it was just too much to do both.
There's only so many things one person can do.
Yeah. And I feel like too, the way that I kind of deal with emotional trauma is I put that into tactile crafts, and film is not that,
Not anymore, unfortunately.
No.
I mean, if you wanted to shoot it on film, you could like do splicing and stuff.
Exactly.
And feel like you're at least doing something with your hands other than typing at a keyboard.
100%. And so for me, it was really just like, I ended up just like building a garden in our backyard and just like kind of trying to process the kind of grief and fear, like in that way.
Sure.
But the funny thing is that like just a couple months after the Matches were on tour again, so I ended up just like going right back out on tour, and it was
well,
this
I wanted
thing
to
where,
ask you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, were you afraid that stopping the movie at that point, that it wasn't going to be as, you said you were always going to get it done. So I believe, trust that you're like, I'm going to get it done. But were you like, damn, this movie's not going to be as good as it was?
Right.
Thanks, Mom. No.
Were
you like worried that, it worked out that they went back on tour so you can get some more footage, but were you worried that like this now isn't going to be the film that I envision because of real life?
Honestly, never. For me, it was never so much about the nature of the movie. It was more about, is our moment over, And I thought our moment was over. Like, granted, here we are now and the moment is over, but that's a whole other story. But like, I was afraid that like nobody would care anymore. I was like, no, this just happened. We have to do this right now. But it's like a documentary filmmaker, I don't even remember who, said to me like, no, like documentaries are moments in time captured. It doesn't matter if it's happening now or if another tour is about to happen. Because my thought was we missed our shot in 2017 or in 2018 because the Matches toured again in 2018. And I was like, oh, that would have been the perfect time. We could have like had everything in festivals in early 2018, and then it would have carried on to their tours.
Were you mad at them in any way? I mean, like, or
not
like, hey guys, like, I mean, we're making this movie here. Why are you doing this while I'm working? Let's line up. Let's make
Honestly,
it happen.
they still have no idea why I made a movie about them. Like, they've seen it. They've seen that it's compelling, and they're still just like, well, we're not that interesting. And I'm like,
I mean, I guess that's good if they're that grounded. Like, you don't want like the rock and roll guy that's like, throwing beer bottles against the wall or anything.
They're so annoyingly modest, and they're just like this collection of incredibly talented weirdos, and like, so it's like
characters for the movie. Come on,
I know they're great characters. I mean, they're so weird in all the best ways. But like they no, I mean, it was never really it's because for them, they didn't want, because I'm so close to them, they didn't want to make it seem like they were making their own documentary, because they weren't. They're very hands off. And the thing is that like, if we are able to do like a proper like indie theater tour run, like they're into doing like a dual like Matches tour.
That sounds like a traveling tour right now.
100%. I mean, that's what we want to do.
Or something. They can play a show, and then you can
drive-in would be cool.
I mean, I actually saw. I mean, it's a bit of a detour. I don't know. I'll probably keep it in the show or not. But like Kevin Smith is doing like his podcasts from drive-ins.
Oh, that's cool.
Book a drive-in theater. And like let them play a show, or show the movie, and then let them play a few songs after the movie to everybody in their cars. Why not?
I love it. Okay, summer 2021. That's what we'll do. Because honestly, the original plan was to do festivals, and then do like an indie theater run where we book out like a couple nights or a week at different indie theaters across the US and coincide whatever day we do like a Q&A or whatever in those theaters across the city, coincide it with a Matches tour date. So it'd basically be like the Bleeding Audio tour with the Matches.
That's an absolutely great idea.
Yeah. And so I hope that we are still able to do it. It'd be great if we had a distributor help us along with that. There's this one called Abramarama that I think would be really cool for it.
Sure.
But what do I know? Like,
yeah. If they're listening, hey.
If they're listening, hi.
Yeah, sure.
But that's initially, that's what we really want to do. Because we feel like the film festival circuit was and is our hope to reach a broader audience, because I feel like our movie is very universal. It's a story that isn't that the Matches are a great avatar for, like they represent a lot of different bands that fell by the wayside. But what is uniquely the Matches is their music is weird and really great, cool. But their fan base is just so strong. And a big part of it is because to them, music was about community. From the very first time that they played a show, it was like for a unity tour in Bosnia. Wow. Like the very first tour they were ever on, all the way to today. Like to them, it's like, yeah, it's about the music, but it's more about the people. It's about like creating a space.
Sure. Unfortunately, yeah, like we just can't do that in right now, but we will soon enough, and we'll talk about it in a second.
I hope so.
So let's jump back to the production of the movie again a little bit, and then we'll talk about the premiere and all of that stuff. So when you got back into the movie after you were taking care of your mom and you're getting back into production, what was the period of time that like you weren't really working on it while you were taking care of your mom, or were you still kind of doing little things here and there?
I was still doing little things here and there, like trying to pick up interviews or trying to it was really the band interviews that ended up suffering from it, right? Is because I was saving them for last. Is the way that I structured the band interviews is I called it a part 1 interview, which was about their history, and then a part 2 interview, which was going to be about from the band breakup to present day, right? Mm-hmm. And so all of the present day interviews were really the ones that kind of suffered, just not because of my mom, but just because as I was trying to balance
all of these different things.
All of these different things.
Sure.
And so it really was, I would say where things started to pick up steam was in November of 2016. The Matches were playing one of their reunion shows in San Francisco, and I tried doing a little music fundraising showcase. Spoiler alert. Don't try and raise funds at an actual physical event. It is just going to bleed you dry, but you're going to have a really fun time. So, and that's basically what happened is we had a really fun time at this music showcase. I think we ended up breaking with $800, and my goal was $5,000 to get starting funds for an editor. And so it was really that felt like a little bit demoralizing. And then at the end of that year, at the end of 2016, my producer, Jeanette, made the decision. I mean, she decided to start a family, and these documentaries take forever. And so she was kind of handing the torch back to me. Mm-hmm. And I found another producer to kind of help me out for some of 2017. And then later in 2017, I found my current producer, Aaron, who has been a total badass rock star genius / awesome. Director therapist.
So when you're going through producers, you were saying, you basically said it was demoralizing. Talk to me a little bit about how you push past that, because the thing about documentaries too, and as you're illustrating right now, I mean, the ups and downs are all over the place, so not only are you trying to find a producer so you can shepherd the project to the next step, but on some level you feel like shit a little bit because now you're demoralized. Here's just another thing.
I don't know if demoralized is the right word, because really what it was is I've kind of been carrying this movie from the start, right? And so Jeanette came in offering a really great, just technical and business acumen. She's very good about making sure that we were by the book and just keeping things very organized. And that's really what I needed is when I get overwhelmed, I either try and do everything or I end up just doing nothing as a result.
Sure.
And so it was really just about trying to find someone to help A, keep me in line, and B, keep things moving at a decent clip, Mm-hmm. And so I think with Bleeding Audio, I mean, it's just been about trying to have just not have it just be me. Like
Right.
most of the time I feel like it has been just me, you know?
Mhm.
And so looking for a producer, just somebody to help has been, you know, a big part of it, you know? And if I have any advice for any documentary filmmakers out there, it's one, remember that no one is going to love your film as much as you. And I feel like that's like
absolutely true.
that is like a story that I feel like doesn't just apply to documentary filmmakers. It applies to narrative as well. But like no one's gonna dedicate themselves to it as much as you. And
Right.
that's, even if they're super passionate about it and even if they're super into the story and everything, like it's not their baby. You're the one carrying it, you know?
Right. Did you ever feel alone while you're working on it? Like,
Tons of times.
you know, where you just didn't feel like you had any support at all.
Oh yeah, tons of times, you know, like tons
How
of
do you
times. And
push
this
past through
is
that?
like, to no discredit to anybody, there are just like gaps in support between producers, you know, where it just
Sure.
felt really overwhelming. And honestly, it was just like I have two modes personally, is I have backed into a corner and going to like Wonder Woman my way out of here, you know, and then I have backed into a corner but am getting buried by all of the things and I just need to like curl into a ball and to recharge, you know.
Right.
Those are like my two states.
But you're aware, so like when you're going through those, you're aware of it, right? Like, can you
Sometimes.
like kind of
Most of the
steer
time.
yourself? Because one of the things that's just absolutely fascinating to me right now about just mental health and everything is, you know, there's you know, like, just go do it. A lot of people are,
Right.
and it's actually kind of a microcosm. When all the shutdowns started happening, half of the people I follow online were like, don't be mad at yourself if you're not creating. Be good to yourself. Be kind to yourself. And the other half were like, now's your chance to go do everything that you need to do and catch up. And I was actually in a weird space.
Yeah.
Because I was like, yeah, this is my time to, like, everyone else is so productive and I'm doing nothing normally. I can catch up. And I tried to start doing things. And then I was like,
It just like
I
makes
don't
it
wanna
worse.
work right now. And it really
Yeah.
does make it worse. And as things kind of have dragged on with all of it, it's just like, I don't, you know. So one of the things that kind of really fascinates me right now is
Yeah.
when
I mean-
people say just go do it. Well, what's that thing that makes you actually finally get up and do it? Because I'm looking
Right.
for that myself right now.
Right. I think for me, it's often a deadline. I was a historical procrastinator, but I think too that the instances that I've described is like pandemic notwithstanding. You know what I mean? Is that
Right.
like, in terms of the pandemic, like I feel like the first 2 months, like I could barely type a sentence in under an hour. You know, like I was definitely feeling it.
Tough to focus. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really hard to
concentrate.
focus. And there was this comic I saw that to me was my response to anyone who was like, oh, what are you getting done in quarantine? And it was this comic of somebody in like a little canoe and they're like in the middle of the ocean and there's sharks everywhere. And there's like something like the canoe has a leak in it and there's lightning and there's storms and in the canoe is like a little notebook and they're like, now's the time to write your novel. And I'm like, that's me. As I'm
Right.
sitting here and I'm like, the world is falling apart. How am I supposed to be creative? And I feel like this filmmaker friend of mine, who I think is a mutual internet friend of ours, but I am lucky enough to be friends with her in person, Maria
Sure.
Miaya.
Yeah, I've never met her in person, but we've
yeah.
chatted online many times, and I've
She's-
spoken to Elena Weinberg and Duncan
Oh,
Coe,
yeah,
who
yeah.
know her as well. So yeah,
Cool. Yeah.
we're all just
so,
a little small family of like little independent. Like, yeah, I feel like we should all get together and like become the Avengers and make like the best movie in the world ever.
I agree.
Like
I
when
like
my
that
movie
idea.
was at South by Southwest, like, and I was like total imposter. I don't belong here or anything. I was like, everyone that I met, I was like, we should all like make the best all-star movie in the world and just have
Supergroup.
like 30. Yeah. Like, I was like, why is nobody saying that? Let's do that.
Yeah, I
but
agree.
yeah.
But anyway, Maria is, I mean, she's one of the best humans on the planet, I think, and a very talented director. But she said something in June that really or May, I think it was. Who knows what month it was? You know, it was like, what year was May?
Right. 2020, I think.
And
Where are we now?
And she said to me, she was like, I'm trying really hard to transition from waiting for this to be over to living through this.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, Yes, that's what I'm doing wrong. Is I'm sitting here like, okay, well, when this is over, like I'm gonna pick everything back up, and then you realize this isn't over. This is continuing. I need to find a way to like make it work for me. And then another friend, because I feel like this is what all of us are doing now, are just sharing mental health tips and tricks. But another friend of mine sent me this like little video thing that was, I think it's meant for children, but it helped me. But it was just saying things like the goal, if you're in like a traumatic situation or something like this, is that the goal is to leave better than you were before. Sure. And that one of the main things that I have not yet taken into my daily routine again is to like start with like physical movement and just like I walk my dog just about every day except for the last 2 days, but I like walk my dog every day, and it's just about trying to like physically move so you can kind of get endorphins going, but just to like leave quarantine better than you were before.
Sure.
So start by physically moving your body, and then like trying to get just that natural endorphin of like, oh, I'm moving, I'm not stationary, I'm not stuck, and then you can kind of start translating that energy into creation, into writing, into into drawing, into anything, any type of creative activity, whether that's cooking or baking or, building or like, just drawing or dancing, like any type of physical creative activity that you can do to like try and keep your mind alive.
Yeah. No, and you put it a good way earlier before too, is, one of the things that really pushes people to do things is deadlines.
Yeah.
But unfortunately in the indie space, when I worked for studios and did, corporate stuff as well, like there are deadlines. We have stuff that's got to get on air. This is when it delivers. But with, an independent documentary, there's, maybe you have a festival deadline that you're looking to hit, but there's no... Not that there's, no repercussions if you miss it, at least, and that's what I'm dealing with right now in the pandemic times, is like, I'll wake up, I'll want to do something, but I don't have a deadline. So I'm like, if I don't do it today, I'll do it tomorrow. And that just kind of, and then the next thing you know, March turns into August. Right. So I think, having deadlines, can really help. But, other than that, like what else do you kind of, and getting out is great too. Like anything else that you do to like shed all of that? And then I want to talk to you about like the premiere and stuff, but what else do you do to like kind of get out of pandemic head and like make the world, feel normal to you again?
I think for me, it's recognizing when it's time to push through and when it's time to lean in, is that like the truth is that all of us are experiencing trauma, and it's like not fair not to recognize it as that, is that this is a traumatic time. We are going through a group collective trauma, and it is very intense. And to acknowledge the grief in any way, is that like for me the grieving was my film festival run. I've been dreaming about this like every second, like literally dreaming about like walking on stage and answering questions and like being at film mixers, dreaming about it for years. And so for me, like those first 2 months, I was just grieving. I was like immobile. I was so devastated. But also I was fortunate, and we can talk about this in a second, but I was very fortunate because we at least had a screening where many filmmakers were deprived of that. And I can't imagine. I mean, we can discuss what's better or worse, is getting a taste or not having or not getting the taste, because then you crave it more.
What do you think? So I mean, so you had your world premiere at Cinequest in San Jose, I think it is, right?
Yes, in San Jose.
So in San Jose, and that was back in March, and you were able to get a screening out of it, correct? So you had that moment where that world premiere, and you're like unleashing it to the and all of that stuff's coming out. Tell me about the experience of being at Cinequest, because if I remember correctly, didn't they like postpone the festival right in the middle of the festival?
Yeah.
So how did that affect your picture and everything else that you were, waiting for years?
Yeah, it was interesting as we were in like the super promo push hype thing, and also being in the Bay Area and having all those tech companies be like the early adapters of shutting down. There was kind of this hum in those like 2 weeks leading up to the premiere. There was also this, I did not purposely plan this, but so my husband and I, we eloped on Leap Day 4 years ago, and so the plan was to have like a reception or party on our first anniversary. So we had that happen the week before our premiere because our premiere was March 7th. So do not recommend having an event like that back to back with the premiere because it was very stressful trying to do both.
Sure.
But it was just like those 2 weeks leading up and just getting everything done, getting the film to the DCP and then like prepping for this event. And then like slowly having news and that like trickling in of something is happening, something
Right.
big is happening, but is it happening to us? No, it's not happening to us, you know? And then as we were running into Cinequest, we went to the opening night party. And it was a little sparse and it seemed like it's like there were a lot of people there. Some people had just flown in and, you know, it was still happening, but there was something that just felt a little different about it. You know, you could sense that
Right.
the news was wearing on all of us. And then I think the next day South by Southwest canceled.
Right.
And that's when we were all just like, something is happening here.
Yeah.
You know, and our premiere was on a Saturday, and I already knew that there were a ton of fans planning on flying in who had
Sure.
either already flown in or were on their way. I mean, we sold out the screening. It was actually a sold out premiere
Wow.
screening.
Awesome.
Yeah, Matches fans sold it out like pretty
I mean,
early
they're
too.
kind of a local band to the area, so you're going to
Yeah.
get a lot of fans come out and see it.
A lot of fans coming out
Were
locally.
they at the screening? Was
Oh yeah,
band
the
at
matches.
screening?
The matches were planned. We had planned a little secret
Oh, wow.
surprise music thing at an area just around the corner, and so we ended up just carrying on because we were like, okay, Cinequest's carrying on. You know, what's going to happen? They're not going to cancel like the day of or something. So, you know, we were just proceeding as planned, but with caution. And then, so the day of our premiere, we were all going down to San Jose, and I was like prepping the venue. That morning, Cinequest announced that weekend was going to be the last
Wow.
weekend of the festival, and they were going to postpone till August. I think I haven't seen anything. They emailed me about something recently, but I don't think that they've gotten
It's all
everything
still
set up yet.
in the air, I assume. Yeah.
Yeah, but they were going to postpone to August. So, and they announced that the day of our premiere. And so that, like, to me, I was just like, do we continue? Do I keep this going? I mean, we're about to have like a little tiny sweaty show. Is that unsafe? Are we going to become a super spreader event? Like,
yeah, boy, that's another
am I
question
am I allowed to hug people? You know, I was like, I've been waiting for this for 6 years. Like, I would like to hug people, you know? And so, so anyway, so we ended up just carrying on because we contacted the festival, and the festival said, we're continuing, let everybody know what's happening. But I know a lot of press didn't show because of it. You know, a lot of them were getting recalled and stuff too. We still had a red carpet, but it was pretty minimal, but there was some great press there. Yeah, it was our sold out screening was still about 75% full, which felt pretty good, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And
so people just weren't coming just because they were afraid of crowds.
yeah, I had so many
Wow.
you know, those texts like don't text me telling me you're not going to make it. Like
right.
you know,
just
like
don't show up.
It just don't show up. Like I
then
might
don't
not
have to,
even
I'll be
notice.
so busy with other things
Exactly.
anyway. I won't be worried about you not being here. But thanks for telling me. And now it's like stuck.
Exactly. Like now I'm just thinking about the fact
man.
that, this person I really like isn't going to be here tonight. Thanks for telling me. It makes me feel amazing, you know? And it's like, and it's just one of those things where I had a ton of those coming in. And I was like, don't look at him. Don't look at him. You know, like I totally respect everyone's decision. We were in the middle of we did not know at the time, but a serious pandemic. So I totally get it. But it was one of those things where the night was still amazing. Like I got to experience the crowd reacting, laughing where I wanted them to, being quiet. And like I could hear some tears where I wanted them to like cry, which felt really good. And I mean, and the film had a standing ovation, you know, and like I could get choked up thinking about it, but the whole audience like stood up. And it felt amazing, you know, and that was, I feel so grateful we had that. And then we did this little surprise thing too, where during the credits, we had the guys come down and play acoustic guitar in the,
Oh, wow. That's great.
in the theater. And everybody sung along, and it was honestly, it was so magic, except for this kind of like percolating, beating drum of what the fuck is happening in the world, but like trying to stay present and enjoy it. And so, yeah, so we did the Q&A, then we kind of wandered over to this little brewery that we had booked for our after party. And then everyone kind of mingled and got their beers, and then the matches played like a little 20-minute set.
Cool. So you still got, you know, something out. Did you have another screening that had gotten canceled?
So we had a screening the following Sunday, so the next day on Sunday at a smaller theater that was still like modestly attended, but like, I mean, most people had just bailed at that point. And then we had another screening the following week that was just straight up canceled because the festival canceled. So yeah, it was definitely wild. It's kind of cool, though, to say that the last movie I saw in theaters was mine.
It was your own. All right. Yeah, I mean, I guess that is something. Yeah.
You know, they're like, oh, what's the last movie you saw in theaters? And I was like,
I don't even think I
my
remember
movie.
the last movie I saw in the theaters. It helps when it's your own. You won't forget.
Yeah, right. So it felt amazing to have it. But now it just like, as every film festival that we had submitted to or had been in talks with, as they like started to cancel or postpone, it just like the idea that feeling was never going to happen again, like kind of kept coming in. So that's kind of where we're at now is, well, initially we had thought about just holding the film because we had actually had a bunch of film festival commitments in the fall already in March.
Okay.
Or at least like supposed commitments. You know how it is.
Yeah, because I was going to say, like, how do you, I mean, you got to kind of figure out, like, you're waiting to hear from festivals and, you know, and like the whole, you know, when everything's shut down, like, can I get an update? What are you doing? And everyone's like, we have our own shit to figure out. We'll let you know when we know. Like, it's nothing personal. We have to figure shit out. So, you know, just talk to me a little bit about, like, just the roller coaster of what's going on, you know, not just in regular life, but like dealing with the picture. Do you feel like an opportunity's been taken away from you that you can't get back? Or do you feel like you have to work twice as hard to get back there? Like, how are you dealing with basically having all of that snatched away at the last minute by no one in particular? There's no one to blame.
Right? I know. It comes and goes day to day, but I do feel like, you know, this was my shot, and I do feel like it was kind of taken away because I do feel like the film could have done a lot better in person at film festivals, you know, because it has such an energy.
Sure. Watching something like that at home would.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like watching a live concert on TV. Like, if you're not there.
I know. I mean, I trust people to sit and watch it, but, you know, I don't want to sound like one of those pretentious filmmakers who's just like, nobody pays attention when they are at their homes. And I hope they do. But no, it's definitely been part of what I've been mourning because the hope was to use this film as, you know, the next step, right? Like, I've got scripts that I want to get made. Like, I have other things that I was hoping that this film could be like, look, she finished something. It's good.
Right.
Let's get her something else to do, you know? And that was the hope. And I had this kind of sobering conversation with an indie producer who was very generous with his time. But I was just like, what are you doing with your films? Like, how are you navigating this world right now? And he said, well, he's like, for our films, he's like, we're actually holding them. Like, we're not doing the virtual circuit. We don't think the films will be able to make it, you know, have as big of a sale because they'll, you know, consider it maybe VOD would be at risk or something. And he's like, and that could be a good choice for you. And he said, but also, like, are you putting your career on hold? And I was like, oh, like, I've basically been putting like my directing career on hold for the 6 years of Bleeding Audio, just trying to get that finished, you know, because it's funny, you know, you can direct something for 6 years, but nobody really calls you a director until the thing's finished, right?
Yeah.
So the thought of like putting everything on hold for another 2 years just so I could have the festival run I wanted.
Right.
The thought was, one, no. And two, you know, these fans deserve this movie. And, you know, I've been very transparent with them in that, like, I have to do this film festival thing first so that I can, you know, hopefully get a distributor that can hopefully put it on a platform that, you know, is accessible to people who weren't just on the Kickstarter, you know?
Right.
And if I release it before then, I might not be able to put it on a streaming platform, you know? Like, there's
all of these... I
don't think
anyone even knows. Like, you know, like, they're like, we're going to hold it back because maybe, but we don't know. Right. It's a whole different thing. And you're just like, I just want people to see my movie. I worked on this shit for 6 years.
I want people to see it, but I also want it to reach a wider audience because I feel like there's important messaging in it too about like how intense touring is and how touring is like excessive touring. If you want to talk about mental health, excessive touring is just not healthy. And it is the only income that a lot of these artists have thanks to streaming. Same thing with indie film is, you know, we put our heart and souls in this. And yes, it's a risk, you know, we understand that it's a risk. But it's like, if it has an audience, I feel like we should be able to make a living off of that, you know? And I think in indie film, what's different than music is that we I think that the deals are structured differently, right? Is that like it's for us to be up on a platform, because I'm still learning, it's like for us to be up on a platform, it's a little bit different than like musicians being up on a platform. So like, technically the film business, I feel like, is a little more business minded, and we're able to protect ourselves and our compensation a little bit better versus like musicians who are just like, well, here's the product, but it's not actually a product anymore, know?
Did you ever feel when you were out on tour with them shooting and you're kind of seeing them live hand to mouth, even though they have this huge support, did that ever, make you question your own life choices? Like, why am I trying to do this for a living when it just doesn't pay well?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think what it is just because I am fortunate enough to like pay my bills with corporate videos. The real question is how do I make things that I get to generate and make a living? And I feel like that's the hardest thing, right? To try and figure out how to bridge that gap.
Right.
Musicians, no matter what, they're making something that they care about and doing something about it, because I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of, we all know there's a lot of stock music. So, not all of them are living that. But it is like, there are ways I feel like to make a living off of the skill set of being a filmmaker, being a director, being a producer, etc. But it's like, how do you make a living off of the thing that you love doing? And it's like, I don't know. My producer is like, you can't say this anymore in interviews, so I'm just going to say it. But like working on Bleeding Audio for 6 years and all the ups and downs that it had is like, I get why people quit. You know what I mean? Like, I totally get it. And it's something that I'm sure there are times where if I had just said, you know what? No. I'm done. Like I probably could have had a less stressful few years.
Right, but this is where you feel like you're right where you belong. The pandemic be damned. Like
pandemic be damned.
My movie done.
Yeah, like the best days working on Bleeding Audio are worth 1,000 of the bad ones. You know what I mean? Is like the days that like made me feel like, oh God, yes, this is my calling. It's like it's worth the bad. But I get like sometimes the bad days were just too many consecutive ones, know? And it was just, I think too, like making a music documentary where you're trying to tell people this is interesting and people are just like, well, I've never heard of them. And it's like, but you will.
Right.
And also like the grant process for music docs.
Actually, let me ask you a little bit about that. I kind of wanted to before and didn't kind of know like how to really get it in there. Because, one of the things the documentary, all filmmakers have to put up with it. I mean, grants. Everyone on earth has to put up with failure.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about the grant process, because when I made Getting Over, I didn't go for any grants. I was really trying to do it not totally off the grid, but just like I almost didn't want any help. I was like, I'm going to do, this is my thing about my family. I'm going to get it done my way, myself, by hook or by crook, however long it takes. So I didn't really go out for a lot of grants and stuff. Talk to me a little bit about that process of putting yourself out there before you even have anything ready and continually being rejected. How that wears on you.
I mean, I have feelings about the granting process, but the first thing I will say is that Bleeding Audio is a music documentary. It's like, it is a story of hope and positivity. And there are so many other documentaries that are fighting to be made out there that are about like bigger social justice issues.
Right.
And while like, some of the rights of musicians are a segment of my film, like, and I don't want to call my film frivolous because I don't think it is. But like compared to some of the big important topics that these documentaries that are applying for these grants that I'm competing with are going for, like give them the money. Like I get it,
We got to change the world.
Right. And I get it. But I will say that I do wish that granting for documentaries did have a little bit more of flexibility when it comes to like films that might just be for fun or entertaining and have bigger world stories a bit smaller, because ours was, and especially in the granting process, we really drove this message home, which was like ours was about the digital age of music, and it still has a little bit of that beating through it, but it's less about that now because people don't want to feel bad about downloading music, you know what I mean? So like we had to find a way of really making it more of a human story, which is what the story that I ultimately wanted to tell anyway and what came out. But I do wish that there were more opportunities for more like not social justice stories in granting, but I get why there aren't, like I get it and I'm totally okay with it. But I just know that there were a couple grants in particular where I was like, I don't want to get my hopes up, but I feel like we're a really good fit for this. And then when they didn't come through, it was like trying not, I mean, you have to be really good at rejection, but you know,
Right.
you have that thing where you're like trying not to be devastated right now because that would have been the relief I needed, you know?
Sure. Yeah,
But,
and it helps. I mean, when it's like, I mean, getting into a festival is one thing, but when you're applying for a grant, like that's money that you need to make
Yeah.
the picture.
Right.
You know, so it's like, please just a little, you know, just a little something, you know?
Yeah,
A
there are
little-
just
a
so
little
many
love would be
times,
nice.
so many times where I was just like, where I'd just be sitting there, I'm just like, can someone throw me a bone? Do I have to do everything by myself? But no, we made it through. And again, it wasn't by myself. The fans helped me out so much in so many ways with the Kickstarters. Honestly, the fans even helped transcribe interviews.
Oh, wow. Well,
Yeah.
that's a money saver.
Yeah, huge money saver. And
Sure.
And also they got to get like an inside scoop. Like some of them got to like transcribe some of their favorite artists' interviews, you know?
That's
So
outstanding. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good perk to offer someone on Kickstarter. Yeah,
and it was a
documentarians,
huge,
you know,
huge help. Huge
Yeah.
help.
get some
So.
free labor, and they don't even realize that they're working for free. They're enjoying
I know,
it. So
yeah.
that's great.
Although
let
I
me
will
ask
say
you-
the turnaround's a little rough on that one.
And you don't want to be like, hey, where's that thing that I'm not paying you for that you promised me by last week? You're
Yeah.
fired, but you don't work for me. So
But they were amazing. They were amazing. And thank
That's
you,
great.
every single one of our transcribers.
cool. So let me just ask you just a couple more questions about where the movie's gonna go next, and then we'll let you get on with your day.
Cool.
So you're gonna be having another screening at San Francisco DocFest coming
Yes.
up in a couple of weeks, which I am really excited about because we were in DocFest in 2018 and we love it up there. And I mean, I assume they're just not having anything in person.
No.
But just tell me a little bit about what is it like? What do you do? Is like, are you going to do a
No.
Q&A? Do you even know? Like, what's the the concept of the festival now that it's kind of virtual?
Yeah. So DocFest is one of the ones that we had gotten into, and it was supposed to be in June, as you probably know.
Right.
And so we had been in contact with them for a while, and honestly, they have been so lovely. And
They are, I mean, their staff
I
is
love
just
them as
amazing.
humans
Jeff
so much, and I am so
Jennifer
thankful
and-
for all of their support and constant communication, keeping us updated. But we are the closing night film, which I'm excited about. Very
amazing.
cool.
That's
Hard to be
great.
a closing night film when everything's kind of VOD a little bit. But what we are doing is we're having they're doing a live stream Q&A on the closing night. So the way SF DocFest is structured is they're using the platform Eventive, which is very secure, but it isn't restricted to like streaming times. Or it's not live streamed. So you can access the film with your ticket once.
Even when it's not like the last night of the festival.
Right. Like
Okay.
we're available for the whole duration of the festival. And then we're going to do a special Q&A on the last night of the festival, which is September 20th, Sunday, September 20th at 8 p.m. And then also the festival is doing a few kind of fun little like live stream recording things. And so this last weekend I recorded like a filmmaker feud, which is they're doing like a trivia thing with Family Feud. And I had just come back from that drive between
I
LA.
think they did that. They used to do it live at the theater.
Oh, they
like,
did?
they have the filmmakers, I think, or maybe it was like one fest, like they have, like little game show, fun little
Totally.
thingy things. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I participated in one of those, and it was super fun. I totally biffed it. I didn't answer anything very well, but it was a lot of fun. So they did a pre-record of that's going to be available for people to screen. And I mean, they've just been great. Like, I mean, living in San Francisco and being a part of SF DocFest, it just like makes sense. And there's such a great community-based festival. That whole org, SF Indie Fest, is just so great. And so I'm really excited about that one. It's one that we had been looking forward to for a while. And then we're also screening at Dances with Films, which starts this week. And our
outstanding.
screenings, yeah, and so our screenings are live streamed, so they're actually like set
A specific
times.
time. Okay.
Yeah, and it is specific Pacific time, and we're doing Q&As after each screening, I believe. But Dances with Films, I'm excited about. It's a very cool festival.
I was at the festival last year because another buddy of mine had his movie in there, And they have it, down, just in Hollywood near where the Chinese theater is. And I don't know if I want to tell you too much about it because I don't want to bum you out or anything. But yeah, I mean, it's just the usual festival. Everyone's hobnobbing and doing all of that. So do you feel, like we were talking a little bit about, if you felt like something's been taken from you, how do you reconcile? And then, like I said, I'll let you go. Like, how do you reconcile, or are you still working on it? Like, just figuring out this new path of your film and how you're interacting with audiences in a whole different way. Like, again, we were talking about whether or not you felt something was taken away from you, but how do you deal with, like, how are you dealing with it all?
I mean, compartmentalizing. I'm still kind of processing, I remember
you don't even have to be all the way there yet.
Yeah. Is that because I remember we had submitted to Napa Valley Film Festival, and it was like the first week of April that they announced that they were canceling, and Napa Valley is in November. And I was just like crushed because a couple of our opportunities were in the November area. And I was just like, oh my God. Because the other thing that we were navigating was because Bleeding Audio had technically had a premiere, like in film festival world, premiere's over.
Right.
Like I was trying to reach out to people and I was like, oh, maybe we could start over. And they're like, oh no, you already had a premiere. And I'm just like... So they're not even making any kind of exceptions or working with you guys? Like, they're basically like, we're going to treat this like it normally is, even though it's not. We had talked to a couple of consulting people about what if we restarted our festival run in 2021.
And just pretend like Cinequest just didn't happen.
I mean, I don't want to pretend that Cinequest didn't happen, but, like in terms of just the film's promotional run.
Premiere. Right.
And just pretend that didn't happen. And there's just too much documentation of it.
Ugh.
And it's just, and they're just like, oh, no, like you had it. It's over. And I'm just like, I don't understand why that's a thing.
Angry. Like,
I know.
And see, that's how I deal with things. I get angry and I swallow that anger and I'm like, and I almost want to, I'll ask you, like, did you say it? Like, I feel like I'm the type of person that if someone had said that to me, I'd almost be like, well, fuck you. Why? Give me a good reason why.
Well, you are from New York.
Oh, yeah, And I try not to say that too much because who knows who in the future might watch or listen to this and be like, I'm not working with that guy. He's but but still, like at the same time, I've always been that kind of guy that was like, I need an explanation.
I don't want to criticize because I think, everybody has their theme for the program, and I understand that that's how it goes.
And that's kind of where it all comes from.
I think like if there's anything that I've learned from the film festival process is because I'm so excited. Like every programmer I've met who's programmed our film has been so kind and generous and excited about our film. And I love them. Like I actually feel human love for these people because of how kind and supportive they are of me and my movie. And I feel like as a filmmaker, we idealize and focus on the like festivals and the institutions as they are, like I've been going to Sundance for 11 years. Of course, the dream is to have a festival, like a film at Sundance, but it's not about that really, it's about like the right person seeing your movie at the right time. Right. And that's like lightning in a bottle, and I feel like I care so much more about like obviously being able to engage an audience, but also like about having programmers that truly love your fucking movie, like that to me is the most exciting and validating thing is like, I'm a humble person by nature. And like every time I have somebody freak out to me about my movie, like we just had a conversation with a PR person and she was just going on and on. She's not our audience. And she was going on and on about how much she loved the movie. It like actually brings me to tears, And so it's like,
it's validating. Like we all want to have our work validated. And I mean, and it does, go back to, the whole mental health, aspect of it, because like you were saying, like the festival. And I think the pandemic's really going to change everything, obviously. But like it's a whole gatekeepers thing that we talk about a lot. Like the festival people are the gatekeepers, and we're looking for some sort of validation for our work, especially in documentary. You're looking for validation from total strangers for the last 6 years of your life, and that can really, really. As we've talked about for the last hour and a half, it does a number on you. And sometimes all you really want is a proper explanation. And I understand where they're coming from. Like, we don't have time to like hold your hand. We're all adults, doing this generally speaking. Like I can handle it too. but I'm a straight shooter. I want people to shoot straight with me. Like, if you didn't like the movie, that's cool, or if you're programming something else, that's, or you have a different motif for that year, I'm cool with it. But just don't be like, we understand that you had applied to many film, just
right.
Like, treat us better than that. Like, I just don't like how, and what they do is, we're going to dangle the Q&A in front of you. We're going to dangle the mid-festival party in front of you. And you're going to get all these accolades we want people to see our movie, but the side effect is definitely cool of doing that whole thing. And you got to see a little bit of that. But they kind of dangle that in front of you. And I want to do, whether it be through the show or through just popping off on Twitter or whatever it is, I want to kind of do whatever I can to kind of shift that a little bit, because I think as filmmakers, we, and we'll kind of wrap it up with this, filmmakers, we already drive ourselves completely bonkers. I don't like to, say crazy or anything insane, on a mental health show, but we drive ourselves bonkers because of all these external things that we're trying to get after. And
100%.
And the way the business works is it's made to pull us in so many different directions. And it's not geared towards keeping filmmakers safe and sane and mentally healthy. And I kind of want to, figure out how we can, and now maybe is the time, maybe we can figure out a better way to do this moving forward. So, I feel so awful that the fruits of your labor, were there and have kind of been taken away. But at the very least, I would want you to know that, like, we have control over this.
Totally.
We don't have to answer to these other people, and we'll figure it out. You'll figure it out along the way.
Yeah.
But it's going to be tough to do it.
And I think control is a big part of it, right? I mean, that's why we become indie filmmakers, is we want to tell the stories we want to tell in the ways that we want to tell them.
We don't want to answer to anyone, studio notes.
Right. And I mean, and with Bleeding Audio, this film it's a piece of my heart. Like, I put so much into it. So many people put so many things into it. And to me, what means the most is, one, obviously getting it out to fans so that fans can finally see it and see the true story, of the matches. But also it's about, for me, what I am mourning a little bit is I know this film can reach a wider audience, and I selfishly wanted to spread the matches to more people, is that I feel like their music was something that, was ahead of its time, and, all the things that you say about the band that you love that didn't make it. But I really do feel like this film shone a light on them in a way that finally gave them their validation, Sure. And so that's the main thing I'm mourning is obviously for me in my career as a filmmaker, but also in trying to broaden their net. And I feel like that opportunity still exists, which is why, we took a long break from Bleeding Audio during the pandemic, just because we thought, okay, well, we're just going to sit on it. We're just going to see what happens. We're just going to wait. And then as these festivals started popping up, as SF DocFest decided, hey, we're going virtual, and then Dancers with Films accepted us, and they're like, we're going to go virtual too. It became, you know what? We can't sit and wait through this. Like, this is our world right now, and the world needs to see this movie. And I think while the film might sting a little bit more of nostalgia for a nice, big, sweaty live show, it's not some sad documentary making you realize exactly how intense the world is right now. Like, there's things about it that will take you on an emotional journey, but the film is overall, like, it's overwhelmingly positive. It's a reframing of perspective for everybody, I think, in the film, all the characters in the film. And it's something that I truly feel like we all need right now, is Sure. I feel like we need to see a story of hope, especially now, just some positivity. And even though, like, seeing a live show and just like, I just had to QC the film again, I'm QCing it again right after we're done talking here. But it's like, you look at like the sweaty live show and you're like, I just want to be there. Right. But hopefully the film can give you that sensation enough, and we do have a 360 film too that I might make public at some point, and people can actually submerge themselves in a crowd. But it's not the whole film; it's just a song at one of their shows.
That's awesome. Yeah, absolutely.
That was fun. That was fun to do. Difficult. I don't know if I'll keep doing 360, but I wanted to experiment. Anyway,
sure.
That all aside, that was just kind of the thing, is that my mom says this, and I guess this could be a good wrap up too. But my my mom, she says, you're only allowed to wallow for one day. I exceeded that limit in quarantine, but she was like, you can't wallow, you have to, allow yourself to wallow for a minute and then go for it, like keep going. And that's essentially what we're doing now is we're just like, okay, you know what, we're going to do as much as we can with Bleeding Audio before the end of the year. And if we're lucky and we're able to get this pandemic under control and we can all be in a theater again, then we'll be able to do this indie theater screening tour, over the summer. So there's still hope. There's still plans, but yeah, I may never stop grieving what I've lost because of it, but I do feel like grief is the loss of something, but like there is excitement for what is new that can replace it,
I mean, it's the one door closes, another door opens.
Exactly.
It's truer, truer words have never been spoken.
Yeah.
So.
And hopefully, we can play with it too in a way that's different. Is a lot of the musicians that were featured in the film wouldn't be able to attend a lot of these screenings. But now that we can just bug them at home, I'm hoping that we can get a few people.
And join the Q&A. I mean, why
Exactly.
not? So the possibilities are, we never realized it before, but the possibilities are endless now.
Exactly.
And we just have to take control of our own destiny. And you said wallow for a day. Those are definitely words to live by. It's been tough for me, certainly, during this pandemic, especially working on this show. I want to get the show out, but sometimes you get up and you just don't want to.
Gotta go right back to bed.
And those days have happened, but there have been days like today where you wake up and you're going and you're doing stuff. So it's just a matter of always putting one foot in front of the other and seeing, the bright side of things as much as possible in this crazy time, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. And then you, me, Maria, and others can form
We're gonna
our super group.
Just a super group. Well, listen, I will PA. No, I won't PA, but I'll AE. I will go get coffee because I need coffee for myself. So we'll figure all of these things out.
I like it. I like it.
So, audience, we're not done making movies just because there's no theaters. We're not done. We're not giving up. We're going to push forward, and we're going to get our pictures out there. So, Chelsea Christer from Bleeding Audio, thank you so much for joining us. It was a great conversation. Very excited to hear about your experiences in the doc world, and I wish nothing but the best for the movie moving forward, whatever it may end up being. But I'm certain it'll happen because it looks fantastic and it sounds great, and it's going to do great. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for having me. This was really great.
And there you have it, our conversation with director Chelsea Christer from the movie Bleeding Audio, the closing night film of this year's San Francisco DocFest. Again, check the show notes. We'll have links where you can buy tickets to watch the movie right now and some other stuff. Don't forget to follow us, follow, subscribe, share, all the social media things. We're on Twitter at HeadAboveH2OPod, Facebook at Head Above Water Podcast, Instagram at Head Above Water Podcast, and our official website is headabovewaterpodcast.com. So check us out on all those platforms. Don't forget to share, subscribe, all that fun stuff like I just said. We'll be back next week with our Atlanta Film Festival special with director Kat Reinhardt from the movie What's Eating Ralphie May. We had a conversation before COVID hit and before March, so we don't really get into what's going on in the world today, but we do talk about, and she will be our second doc filmmaker back-to-back, talking about her process of working on the movie with Ralphie's family and everything that went into it, and trying to make a career not only as a director, but an editor and all that fun stuff. So join us next week for that one. This is 2 weeks in a row with 2 episodes, so stick with us, and we got some more fun stuff coming at you. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next week on Head Above Water. Take care, guys. Bye.